Oh, hey. Yeah, I can't afford actual introduction music. Or maybe I can, but, why pay when you can just go bum bum into a microphone? Anyway, it's late. I'm feeling a little goofy. Hey, good day, everybody. I'm Marty, also known as the Raging Owlbear on social media, Blogspot, and Twitter. I have not been good about updating my blog or putting out any videos recently. It's because life, because life happens. And when you're not when you have a job that is not content creation, that is sucking up all of your lifetime, and you come home, come home. I work from home. But when you come out of your office and you're done for the day, sometimes the last thing you want to do is sit down in front of a computer again. So, but it's been a year. It's been a year for my poor blog and for the Storm King's Thunder series. And so it's long overdue that I finish out this series because this is the last episode. Storm King's Thunder is ending, or it ended. We actually played a while back already. So I just did not get around to recording about it. There was some extenuating circumstances. So, well, let's get into it. So, for those of you who are new to the video, who are watching this for the first time, you haven't seen sort of my historic videos, but I had sort of set up some changes into the Storm King's Thunder book, and we're coming into the end game with my group. And right when I know we're near the finish line, but there's going to be several sessions that I kind of have to wrap some of these other threads up that I have going in my game. And a couple that it was in my gaming group who are very close friends of my wife and I come to us and say, we're moving to New Mexico. And I was like, what? I was pretty bummed about it. They're very close friends. And, when you get older and you're an adult, it's hard to meet people that you really connect with on a deep personal level. But anyways, they were like, we're leaving, and, here's the time frame and stuff like that. And so suddenly all these things that I was kind of trying to lay out, I mean, we were near the end of the campaign anyways, but now there was a real urgency to wrap it up. An extreme one, because we only had a few sessions before they were going to go. And, they were, of course, trying to pack up their house and move and, close on their current house and open and buy the new house. And so it was a little bit crazy. But anyway, so I had been thinking about this, the finale sort of for some time. And so, I had started putting together some craft, because I like to do some, fancy tabletop-y stuff when we go to a big fight or something, just for the funs and stuff like that. But now the whole schedule was thrown into mayhem, because I wasn't really ready to be like, oh my God, now we have to set the finale and stuff like that. So I figured out how many sessions we had left, which was basically, 2 or something ridiculously low. It was a small number where we had to wrap everything up. And, so I had to get them from where they were. They had rescued Hekaton, the fake Hekaton. I'll get into that in just a minute. They'd rescued the fake Hekaton. They had to go back to the Storm Giant Court. And then I had to figure out how to get them to Iymrith in 2 sessions. So there was a bit of a time crunch. And let's just say, and this is not on my friends. They have a life to lead. So I'm not like, dang you for moving. I mean, I miss them, and I wish they were still local. But I was like, okay, how am I gonna get them to get the party to where we need to be so we can wrap this up before they move? So we set a date like literally like 2 or 3 days before they were gonna drive out of town. Like we were like, okay, we're gonna play on a Sunday, which is not our normal day. We're gonna start at like noon, and we're gonna just try to like play for several hours on end, kind of like in the old days when you're much younger and you have all that time. We were like, we're gonna do a huge block. We're gonna do several hours. We're gonna, really try to knock it out at the end session. And so I'm trying to do all my planning and put together something that's really cool for them and whatnot. Let me, for those of you who haven't watched my series before, which, a few of you may be coming into this for the first time, I'd love for you to check out some of my other videos, but I'll just very briefly go over some of the changes I made have things make more sense. And I'm not gonna, for anybody who has watched the videos before, some of this I've obviously gone over before, but I'm gonna try to summarize it. So there's a couple problems I had with the book, in that I didn't feel like either Iymrith or Slarkethel the Kraken had a proper villain motivation. Like, the books are very, I mean, and I know the books are just trying to be like, hey, it's up to the DM to sort of think about these things, but it didn't even give like a potential hooks or anything like that. So I had to think of like, okay, the wording's broken. Why is Iymrith involved with the giants? And why is Slarkethel involved? And how are they involved with each other? Like, none of it, there was no guidance in the book, and it didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So over time, as the game was progressing, I was just like, okay, I'm just gonna mull on that in the background. I'm not gonna focus on it as we're playing, because maybe something will come to me as we go, or the players will do something which will, clarify where things sort of stand. And so what eventually came to me as they were going through was, and I ran some of the side quests that are on like DM's Guild. Kraken's Gamble is one of the very most popular ones, and that one actually really got my brain thinking, because you have Lord Dryland, who is in Yarter, and then Kraken's Gamble sort of takes place as part of Yarter. And there is spoiler alert, if you're a player, don't, there's the Aboleth in Yarter. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up attaching the Aboleths and the Kraken. So basically all the Kraken is actually an ancient Aboleth. There isn't really a, quote, Kraken as it is. People will just call it the Kraken, but really what it is just this massively ancient, old Aboleth that's been around. And that's the Kraken. The people don't know it's an Aboleth. They just call it the Kraken, whatever, because all they see is the tentacle. It's not like anybody faces it face to face. They see the tentacles. They just think it's this giant octopusy type thing, whatever. But it's actually an ancient Aboleth. And so the Aboleth that is in Yarter, that is doing that, is like a younger one who's a lieutenant. So I created a connection. I said, okay, Slarkethel is like the mob boss. He's the Jabba the Hutt dude and then he's got some lieutenants, and he's basically trying to control the waterways. So in my game doesn't take place in Forgotten Realms. I have a homebrew world, but so I took some of the elements of the existing cities like Yarter, and Golden Fields and whatnot, and I just sort of transplanted them into my world. But the idea is that there's an inland sea in my game, and then there's the western sea or eastern sea, whatever. And so Slarkethel is just trying to centralize his control of all of the major sea areas on the world. So that's his play in Yarter, is that He's out in the ocean. The inland sea is kind of fresh territory. He's expanding into, so to speak. So the Hutts are expanding their influence. So same thing. Slarkethel is trying to expand his influence to all the major waterways in my game world. And so, yeah, he has this Lieutenant Aboleth who's now in Yartar, and that's the one who's helping to set up Large Island, and is known as is Usith, and people, because he uses his psionic abilities, they think Usith is just a like an elven sorcerer or a human sorcerer or something along the lines. They don't suspect he's an Aboleth because he does his what do you call it, the illusory projection. He has an illusory image, this sort of psionic illusion image of himself that moves around when he needs to appear in front of people. Oh, hold on, that was weird. My monitor just snapped off. Okay, I'm back. So that's how I sort of connected that part of Kraken. And then I was like, okay, well, so what's the connection with Iymrith and the Storm Giants? And so I said, well, because Slarkethel is trying to control the oceans and stuff like that, he wants Hekaton out of the way. But not just that out of the way, he wants control of the Storm Giant court itself. And then Iymrith is trying to. What I decided is that the Rise of Tiamat storyline has not happened in my world, and my idea is that Iymrith's play is to start the war between giant kind and humankind to distract from the fact that they're trying to bring Tiamat onto the material plane, onto the world. So the whole, summoning of Tiamat from the hells onto the world, the whole point of the giant small folk war is to distract folks from recognizing that the dragons have this thing happening in the background. And her goal, her motivation, is to become Tiamat's second in command. So her whole deal is, I'm going to help this thing happen, and therefore I will be rewarded. Like, Tiamat's going to come whether I want it or not. Like, maybe I'd be fine if Tiamat didn't come, and I could just hold my place in the world as it is. But Tiamat's coming. I'm going to get on board that wagon so I can, maintain my power base and expand it even and become the second in command for Tiamat. Or at least a very important lieutenant to Tiamat. So the idea is that Tiamat would have, because she has she's the multichromatic dragon, that perhaps she would have a lieutenant of each of the dragon kind, a blue dragon, a red dragon, a white dragon, stuff like that. So there's going to be some power struggle amongst the dragons to put themselves forward. And there may even be some dragons who are like, hey, I kind of like how things are going. I don't really want Tiamat to come back. And so in my mind, I was like, there's going to be dragons that are actually working against the summoning of Tiamat because they might be the top of the heap. There's the Klauth, the red dragon is this massively ancient red dragon who has his own, cultists and worshippers and stuff like that. He may not want Tiamat to come back. And so that was my reasoning, like, why would Klauth be helping the players? And so I was like, he's going to help the players because he doesn't actually want Tiamat to be successfully summoned back into the world. He likes what's going on in his life and his world. He doesn't want to have to bow and scrape to a goddess on the prime material plane. He's like, you know what? And so he's actively working against Iymrith, and that was my idea of, okay, well, Klauth is going to help the PCs. That's why he gifts them the airship. That's why maybe he does some other things in the background. So Iymrith is trying to help Tiamat get summoned and become a lieutenant. Klauth is working against that activity. Slarkethel wants to replace Hekaton and put a puppet storm giant on the throne, someone he can control. And Slarkethel basically finds out about the dragon's ideas of getting the giants and the small folk to war, and is like, you know what, I'm gonna use this. I'm gonna try to ally myself with somebody who has similar goals as me, or has at least parallel goals as I do. And was my reasoning of like, okay, why would Slarkethel and Iymrith be working together, basically? Or, even if they're not working directly together, why are they both working against Hekaton? And so the idea is that, he's like, hey, you can work your thing to get the war with the small folk going. But I get the seas. I get to control the seas. That's fine. You can do whatever you're doing with your, dragon goddess, whatever. That's fine. But here's how it's gonna work. I'm gonna, basically, make sure that Hekaton is replaced, and we both get what we want. So Slarkethel's goal was to perform a sort of magical psionic ritual with Hekaton and pull Hekaton's mind out of his body and replace Hekaton, mentally through like a mind swap, magic or whatever, but put one of his, basically a cultist, an important cultist, into the Storm Giant's body, and then that he'd be like, look, you can be king of the Storm Giants as long as you serve me. And, of course, his cultists are like, oh, yeah, whatever you want, master, and that sounds like a pretty good deal to me. I get to be king of the Storm Giants. Sure, whatever, and I'm just have to be in Hekaton's body. So that was the whole goal, which Slarkethel actually succeeded. The players didn't know that. And as a matter of fact, the whole rescue situation was set up when they rescued Hekaton. The Kraken, Slarkethel, was actually making it look like he didn't want Hekaton to be rescued, but it sort of allows the rescue to happen. And that's exactly how it sort of played out. And as a matter of fact, I tried to drop hints, because they came in and they're fighting this stuff. If you watch my last video, I talk all about that encounter. They did really well. They did rescue Hekaton as the goal was, but of course there was, the puppet master behind the scenes going, yes, my Slarkethel was working on that Emperor Palpatine level of 5 steps ahead of where the heroes are. Ideally, maybe even 10. So they rescue Hekaton, and now this is the fake Hekaton. They've got the cultist in the Hekaton's body. They go back to the realm of the Storm King, back to Maelstrom, and then of course that's where now I have to like get them to Iymrith in the next couple sessions, because that's sort of where we ended it when my friends were like, hey, we're moving to New Mexico, and we're going like next month or whatever. It's like it was like super fast. So I had intended to sort of play out the Hekaton subplot in hopes that I could lay enough clues down that they might eventually figure it out. They might not figure it out immediately, but it was going to be kind of like a denouement after the whole Iymrith thing. I was going to try to figure out how to make that play out. But, again, things were rushed, so I didn't have time to sort of set up all of that subplot. Pardon me. So what I actually ended up doing is, and again, this was rushed. I was like, okay, you guys got to go fight, Iymrith. They knew she was the blue dragon. They knew she was responsible for the death of the queen. And Hekaton's like, you guys got to take out this blue dragon. But I'm going to stay here in my kingdom because, that Kraken, his forces have declared war on me, and he's coming for me and my people. So I have to be here to protect my kingdom. But you can take Sarissa and Outtro with you. And the reason that he's giving them Sarissa and Outtro is those are the 2 storm giants who are most likely to realize that the deception, Uthor being the war master of the house and the right hand person of the king or queen, when Sarissa was on the throne. And Sarissa, obviously, because she's the daughter, the one remaining daughter, after the other two have been exiled or murdered. So he's like, yeah, go kill Iymrith. Take Sarissa and Uthor with you. They'll help you out. And, of course, my players didn't question that at all. They're like, oh, great, we got two storm giants to help us out. They were pleased as punch. That was the greatest thing they could ever. So, I was intending to lay out more clues about that. But, again, now we got to the point where I was just rushing to get to the final combat so we could just have some fun rolling dice and we could wrap it up before my friends left town. That was two people out. That would have been two people out of my group. So it's kind of like we would have had to continue on with. I think we had 6 at that point, so we would have had 4 people left, which we still could have continued. But I was just like, we're trying to wrap up the whole campaign. Let's see if we can get it done with everybody present. So, let's see. Where was I done? Oh yeah. So. So then let me show you some of the things that I built. God, my monitor keeps going off for some reason. Hold on one second. I don't know why. Okay. It keeps trying to go to sleep on me while I'm recording. I don't know what the hell's going on. It's like it should know that I'm using the computer. Okay. So anyway, I now I have just couple weeks left to kind of make sure I get everything done and set up the whole final combat. And again, we're like, okay, we're gonna do an all day. We're gonna do an all day game on a Sunday and get everybody together. And so I start thinking about like what I wanted to do for the arena combat, because like I had kind of been planning to build something with cardboard and styrofoam and stuff like that, like I've done with some of my other sessions for the big fights. But now I'm like, oh my god, I'm totally out of time. But my friend, the one who was actually moving, the job he was leaving, they actually had a large format printer at his work that he had access to, that he would utilize as part of his job. And I was like, I knew I wasn't going to have time to build a whole big thing, but I was like, can you print me out a large map? And he's like, yeah, absolutely. Let's do something. And so he printed me up something. It was, just like a photo. It was 42 inches wide. It's on like photo paper. So I blew up the map, the arena map where Iymrith's Lair is. I didn't do the underground map. We're going to do the above ground battle. I'm not really going to worry about the underground battle, or if they go down there, I'll figure out what we're going to do. But basically, my whole thing was like, we're going to try to finish up the finale all in the arena area. Especially because I was thinking, I know there's some fun, interesting things to do when they go down into the underground lair, but I was like, this is a dragon fight. She's going to want mobility. So she's going to want to be able to fly, or if she does burrow, it should be like go into the sand here, pop out of the sand there. I wanted it to be very dynamic and have everything out in the open. So I was just like, I'm just going to focus on the outside stuff. And if some of the players decide to go down the hole or whatever, we'll deal with that when we deal with that. But it was fine because that was never really, on their mind. So yeah, my friend Phil prints out this giant map. It's this glossy, photo papery style map. It really looks really nice, and it was on this huge thing. And I was like, "Oh, that's so great!" And he's like, "Oh no, this is just the proof. The real map I'm printing for you is on like a canvas, a thin canvas layer, like this really really nice thing." And you know what? I don't even have it right here. I have parts of the stuff that I built up. So I was like, oh my God, that's fantastic. So he ended up giving me the canvas thing, like the next week or something like that. And actually, let me put up just a few pictures of what I built, just so you guys can get an idea. So the screen shows the slides is going to go, but this is basically, I built the stands, and you can see the canvas map is underneath, and then I used the proof map. I cut it out. I cut out all the pieces of the proof map so I could add a 3D layer on top of the flat map. So I wanted some height and stuff like that. So it was fantastic that he had printed me 2 copies, because I could then cut out the photo paper copy, and I laid the canvas map down, and then I started piecing things together with cardboard and hot glue and whatnot, and the pictures will come up in a moment of like some of the sort of in progress. So yeah, I went through and I had been 3D printing some. I wanted statues. Yeah, so here's where I was testing out the size. Because it was still only 42 inches wide, so I had to figure out what the scale was going to be. And it's not like perfect miniature scale, like 1 inch is 5 feet type of thing, but it was like, it was closer to 1 inch is about 10 feet. Roughly, it was pretty close to that, so I was like, whatever, we'll just run with it, and we'll just figure out what the movement is. I'll say, yeah, you can move this far in a given turn. So, but it turned out really, really nice, actually. And I'm doing this like literally the last like week before I know they're going out of time. So while I'm doing this project, of course, I'm not doing the other prep work that I probably should be doing, because I wanted something big and visual, and I had to make a choice. And I was like, screw it, I'm gonna wing it. So I want to make the stadium, and I'll figure out what to do with the combat. I mean, while I was making the stadium, obviously I'm thinking about it. So it's not like I wasn't doing prep work, because I was. But I had these 3D printed pieces for the statue. You can see up there, the broken statue. I had actually 3D printed some pieces, actually even a few months before, because I knew this was going to be there eventually. And printed out some other stuff, and then I just grabbed greebles and I just grabbed whatever I could to add to the map, because I knew I wasn't going to have time to print out everything that I wanted to 3D print. That and my printer was acting wonky, so I wasn't always getting good prints. But so yeah, as you can see, I cut cardboard, I pasted the layer on top of the cardboard, and then I added some height by gluing some cardboard pieces for the height, and and then I just kind of got it to work, and I was just super pleased with the results. My players really loved it, but. So here's the downside to having to rush everything. And what ended up happening is the actual battle itself fell a little flat. For several reasons. Some of it my fault. Some of it because the players did things that were really out of character for them, unexpected. Well, let me get to that. I'm not saying it was the players' fault that things didn't go well, except that in my campaign, my players are pretty tactical. I mean, they know their capabilities, and not everybody in the group is like super tactical, but I do have a few folks in my group who really like use some of the same tactics. They do a lot of damage output. So from a combat perspective, like they are usually quite good at like bringing the pain when they need to. And when they were setting up for this, so I created the large arena, and then I created some distance back, and I knew they had to like do an approach and whatnot. When they planned that out, it kind of turns out that, let me switch back. They hindered themselves very badly, because the arena map and the area, well, it's huge. I mean, if you have 1 inch is equal to 10 feet roughly, and the map is 42 inches wide, you've got, 400 feet of left to right movement and front to back, same 400 or 500 feet. It was a longer map actually. I think I had it 42 wide, but I had it like with the map extension that I added in the front. It ended up being 600-700 D&D feet in terms of the full size. And I was kind of loosey goosey about movement. I let them move pretty far during a turn to try to make up for some of that. But, it was a huge area. So one of the things that they did when they were planning, they're like, and it was a good idea. They had scouted it out. They, because they had people who could wild shape and do, various invisible and wild shape and blah, 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 blah. So they could scout the area, get a real view of what's going on in the map. And I told them, oh, there's these ballistas and there's all these statues and whatnot. And they knew that Iymrith had was a statue creating creature. And that, so some of them may be constructs or they didn't realize a lot of them were going to be gargoyles, but they knew something was going to be up. They knew it wasn't just going to be like, okay, we fight the dragon and that's it. They suspected, they had their suspicions about what may be going on. So they scouted out really, really well. But then what ended up happening is they decided that they were going to try to position themselves. So one person was over here and then other people were back here and stuff like that. They kind of spread themselves out a lot. And part of it was because they were concerned about the breath weapon situation, but they spread themselves really far apart from each other because they were coming in with okay, I'm going to teleport there or I'm going to do stuff like that. So they basically were able to set up where their players wanted to be on the map, and I basically said, just tell me where you want to come in. I wasn't going to get too, wrapped up in the weeds of how they're going to get to their positioning, because one of the things is that I knew Iymrith was basically watching them and scrying them and stuff like that all along. So I was just like, tell me where your PCs want to go. And I had an idea of I knew exactly where Iymrith was. Even before they told me anything, I was trying not to use their planning knowledge as meta knowledge for myself. I had a plan of where Iymrith was going to come up, and it wasn't the hole. That was misdirection. Because that was sort of what they expected. They're kind of placing themselves in different places around the hole, so the hole would be the center of the situation. But I knew what I was going to do. I was like, she's going to be in the sand behind the stadium, and when she comes up, she's going to come up over those bleachers or whatever. And the other thing that I did is that because I've been reading online about how other parties had really pounded Iymrith down really quickly and stuff like that, I buffed her up a little bit, and that ended up going badly a little bit too. Because I gave her spell. The funny thing is, I gave her a lot of spell levels because she's supposed to be this massive ancient dragon with sorcerer abilities. So I did give her a whole bunch of spell levels. Ironically, she didn't really use many of those. That's not what hurt the party. And but what I did do is I said she has a simulacrum, and a simulacrum is basically a carbon copy of yourself. Goes out there, fights, acts as if it's you, and then if they kill the simulacrum, you're like, haha, surprise, that wasn't me. That was just my fake self. And so I had the thing that they were fighting was the simulacrum at first, not Iymrith herself. So she was waiting basically off stage while her simulacrum was fighting. But what ended up happening is, so they get into it. The storm giants, I basically say, the storm giants are going to handle some of the gargoyle situation, and then you guys can come in there. And then they had the bronze dragon from not Kraken's Cabin, the flying misfortune. So I sort of rebranded that dragon. I don't know, copper or bronze. I guess copper actually, for lightning bolt. But anyways, or brass. The point is, they had made friends with Xavier. That's what his Vaxoriansis is his real name. They made friends with Xavier, this dragon, who I replaced, who is the same dragon but different name. And so they brought him along. They had the 2 storm giants, so they had some backup. And so basically what I said is that, okay, these guys are going to handle these ballistas, and then they were going to, they had a really good idea of how to take out the ballistas quickly. And so they executed on that. They actually did a really good job, knocked out the ballistas very quickly, and were meleeing the various gargoyles who were working it. And I had like animated statues. I had gargoyles, and then I had some like golems, and I had a whole bunch of like construct creatures that I had sort of thrown in. I didn't want to put 40 gargoyles into the combat like it recommended in the book. I knew that was just gonna be too much. So what I ended up doing is just using I used a few large constructs instead of like lots of minions and stuff like that. I didn't want to deal with this crazy massive combats where like, okay, I gotta roll 40 attacks now or whatever. That was just ridiculous. And so that was the other reason I buffed Iymrith. But when it ended up happening, it wasn't even the buffing of Iymrith that created an issue. What created an issue is Iymrith has a Lair action where she can blind people by bringing up a little dust storm. And then she would summon the little dust devils. So I brought in the dust devils from time to time. But what killed them was this stupid dust storm. Because what inevitably ended up happening is that the rogue character, who does a lot of damage when he gets to do his sneak attack stuff, put himself in the place where Iymrith was coming up. Like just by happenstance. Because like I said, I had planned on Iymrith coming from the back of the stadium, and the rogue was setting himself up near some of those statue plinths so that he could sight into the hole and stuff like that. And the dragon like literally crawls up right behind him when it makes its appearance. And he wasn't surprised. Like I had him do his perception and stuff like that. And so because I didn't want to just, chomp on him and just destroy him. And Iymrith she wants to, not only does she want to make an entrance, she wants to make her presence known. And actually it was her simulacrum, but her thing was, okay, I'm going to, these people are ants. I'm just going to slowly crush them and enjoy it. But she has the Lair action that can blind people. And it's supposed to be just a minor annoyance. It's supposed to be a thing where she does it, her Lair action, the sand kicks up, they have to roll a con save where they get blinded, and of course they can save every turn, and the idea is that it may give them disadvantage for one turn because they're not sighted or whatever. It ended up completely decimating the rogue. He could not make his con save. He was blinded. And I tried to tell him, I was like, you can still make attacks. Because it's like you just kind of rub the sand out of your eyes, stuff like that. You're at disadvantage, but he was so, I don't know. He reacted strangely to the fact that he wasn't going to get to do his primary thing, which of course sneak attack stuff. So, I didn't want to tell him what to do, but the best thing for him to do was just to get away as quickly as possible. And he had means to get away from the dragon fairly quickly if he had, but he was just kind of the chaos of the moment and the combat. I think he was a little bit like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? This dragon's just going to eat me. I'm blinded. So, he did a lot of stuff where he was just like ducking underneath the broken down statues and crawling around and hiding and going for cover and stuff like that, which is fine. So he was taking lots of defensive things, so any attacks would be at disadvantage. But so that took his damage capabilities like almost 100% out of the combat because he could not make his con save. And the other problem is that because everybody had positioned themselves so far away from each other and were, like literally hundreds of feet from each other, and granted, they had long-range spells, so they could still use some of that stuff. But they weren't able to quickly get to one another if somebody needed help. And that was the biggest thing they ran into, actually, is they were too far away from each other to buff one another, to assist in different ways, whether it's casting buff spells or just working together. They had spread themselves out so much in fighting the gargoyles and the ballistas and doing all the stuff like that, that when Iymrith made her appearance, or the simulacrum made her appearance, they were just totally caught flat-footed. And so, the combat went on, and we'd been playing for several hours at that point. And they were getting the simulacrum's hit points lower and lower, but they were not like it was not like, oh, we're pounding her down and we're totally going to take the victory. They were grinding her slowly and slowly, but they were also now starting to run low on resources. They'd used their wild shapes. They had polymorphed the one fightery guy so he could be King Kong and beat up stuff, and they were using all their high level spells and stuff like that. But again, they were kind of far apart from each other, so they weren't able to support each other in other ways. They didn't have any sneak attack help from the rogue because he was too far away to meet up with people, and he was constantly blinded. And then when another party member came in to try to help him out of that situation, that party member got blinded too, and they couldn't make their con saves. They couldn't roll, and it wasn't a high DC; it was a low DC con save, relatively speaking, for their levels, a low DC con save to unblind themselves, and they were just sucking it up. And now it's late on Sunday afternoon. My friends are leaving in 2 days. And I'm looking at the state of the battle, and I'm like, we're not going to finish. We're not going to be able to finish today. So and this is where it was kind of on me, because I was like, I didn't know what to do. We were all exhausted. We'd been playing for several hours. My brain was mush because I had been trying to get all the things done for the stadium, for doing my prep work, doing everything like that. So I was, really tired as well that day, trying to run the giant boss fight for several hours. So we paused and we're like, we knew we had to bring the session to an end because it was getting late. My friends were leaving in a couple days. They had to finish packing the last of their stuff. And I said, we have to just call it. I was like, I think you guys have to run away because you're not well. And I had to decide how much I was going to reveal about what the state of the game was. And I basically said, hey, you've been fighting the simulacrum. I just told them, I said, you've been fighting a simulacrum. You haven't been fighting the actual Iymrith. She is just about to, you guys were about to kill the simulacrum, but she's going to emerge. You guys need to run away because you're almost out of resources, and we're out of time. And that was the moment where, like, all of the time we spent during the campaign, everybody was just kind of like, huh, okay, well, that happened. And, of course, because our friends were moving away, we weren't even sure we were going to continue on with the campaign after this battle, like whether the other characters would still be around and we would try to do something, or so, like, it kind of, we just called it. We said, I was like, you have to run away. There's just, we don't have time to finish the battle, and B, you guys are almost out of resources, and you haven't actually faced the true dragon yet. You've just beaten down the simulacrum. And boy, that was just not a great way to come to a close before my friends were leaving. So I struggled with that for a long time after the game was over. Like, I really thought about what I might have done differently. But my game has always been predicated on, I'm going to play hard. The monster's going to play intelligently. They're going to play hard. They are trying to kill you if it's a lethal battle. And I'm not, putting on kid gloves, as so to speak. So, and that was from the get-go. I said that at the beginning of the campaign. I said, this is not going to be a, you walk in the park game. People could die. I tried to set the expectation. Now, as it turns out, we actually only had one death and they got resurrected, or no, we had two, but they were able to recover from those. But this was for them to come all the way and then lose this fight, like just killed the mood for like just absolutely. I mean, yeah, people were not. It was a tough day. It was a tough day because I said you guys haven't even faced the real dragon, and they're like, what? But the reason I did that is because, again, when they work well together, the damage output they have is massive. So I was like, they're going to kill the Simulacrum in 4 or 5 rounds. Like I really thought, I was like, that thing is going to go down quickly. Relatively quickly. And then I'll bring out Iymrith, and then, we play another several rounds against the major boss. And it just didn't happen that way. And the other thing is I didn't want the giants to take center stage in the combat from the PCs. So basically I was saying the giants are fighting the gargoyles and constructs and stuff like that. Like I kind of set their battle aside. I said, you guys are focused on the dragon while the giants and the other dragon are keeping the dragon's minions at bay. So that way it became about the players facing down the dragon rather than all of the side stuff. And so that I thought was a good idea. And I think the players like that too. We didn't want to have all the distraction of the side battle of, the giants are killing. So I was kind of doing that during the game. I was figuring out, okay, how much damage the giants were doing, and rolling a little bit for them on the side. I was rolling it up though. I was basically saying, hey, this is roughly how much damage the giants do per round. This is what their rough hit probability is. And so I just kind of did a quick and dirty, okay, they killed, 4 gargoyles this round, or they did this, and, was just sort of, that was on the side. And again, I was trying to make it so that it was going to be the dragon versus the party, while the giants and the other creatures are fighting, quote, off screen, in a sense. They were still there, but that was not the focus of the battle. So we get to the end and we have to call the session. And it was, kick in the teeth. It just did not go the way I thought it was going to go. I knew everybody felt really disappointed that it didn't go better, and I felt a little bit of that heat. Like I really thought they were maybe they thought I should have been easier on them because it was the last big fight and my friends were moving away, and it probably would have been better if I just maybe hand waved it and been like, hey, you guys win, oh, you killed the creature, decide that the simulacrum wasn't a simulacrum after all, and they actually killed the big boss and stuff like that. But that's just, I didn't want to, that would have felt hollow to me as well. To just hand them a victory against an ancient dragon that they knew, if I just been like, okay, you win, yay, woo, how maybe they would have walked out of there a little happier. But if they had really thought about it, they'd be like, oh, Marty gave us that battle. We didn't win it. He handed it to us. And I didn't want that to be the feeling that they got at the end of the campaign. So, yeah. So, what I realized in retrospect is that the simulacrum was not necessarily a bad idea, but what I should have done instead, if I had been thinking more clearly and hadn't been just exhausted at the end of a 6-hour game session, I would have used that cliffhanger as the end. So they've been fighting the simulacrum, fighting. They kill the simulacrum, and I say, victory is yours, blah, 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 and make it woohoo, and then be like, but, that was just her construct, and she crawls out from behind and is like, you haven't killed me. it's only just begun. And then I should just said end curtain, end scene, like I should just ended it with a. So instead of been like, oh, you guys have to run away, I should have just been like, do close the curtain and, what the future holds, no one knows. It's a mystery. Did you guys win? Did you guys lose? I don't know, but it was a cliffhanger. Yay! Okay, end of campaign. So if I'd been thinking about it, I would have wrapped it up with like just a cinematic at the end. And yeah, that wouldn't have been as satisfying either. But everybody would have come out there going, "Oh yeah, you gotta," it would have been a little bit of a different mood rather than saying, "Okay, you guys got to run away. We don't have time to finish this battle. You have to run." and instead, I could have just made it like an event, and then say, curtain closes. So in retrospect, not that you'll ever face this type of situation, but if you have the choice between like something that's just going to absolutely end on a low note, figure out a way to tweak it somehow that even though there's a loss or whatever, that you end with a suspension, a cliffhanger, or whatever. I don't know. Honestly, I don't know what advice to give about this, but I just know in retrospect, it didn't. It ended kind of on a sour note. That we'd spent all that time on that campaign, and it did not end satisfactorily. And like I said, that was somewhat the players because they weren't playing to the level that I thought they would play. Because like I said, they're usually very good tactically, and they're very good at damage output. And for whatever reason, they just didn't work together in that combat at all. They were all just sort of fighting different things, and they weren't focusing fire, and that meant that like, okay, well now what do I do? How am I going to react? I can't just, do I make the monsters act more dumb or play them less effective than they should be? I didn't want to throw the combat. It's a hard one. And then, again, the part that I kind of screwed up on was more just when we were tired and we were at the end of the day, I could have wrapped it up in a more satisfactory way and at least saved the moment before my friends, moved to another distant state. So that's one of the other reason that I haven't done one of these videos about the end is that it didn't end well, and we moved on. So we closed out that campaign, and I made it. I left it open to say, hey, we could play with those characters again later, but we just kind of lost all of our steam. But the arena looked cool. I mean, it was still largely a fun combat, but I know it was frustrating for the player who had the rogue because they were just constantly blinded, and they felt like I think that was the biggest disappointment for them. They didn't necessarily hate the fact that they didn't win, but they felt helpless during the loss, and then I think everybody that same malaise spread to everyone because they just weren't knocking down the dragon the way they thought they should be. And the dragon was really, beating them around, really smacking them around until they were basically out of spells and running out of healing. And so I think they just felt like they never had a good handle on the combat. So lesson learned. And, if I had had more time to sort of work out the kinks on that, it might have been better because, like, if we hadn't had to do it all in one session, if we had started the fight and then say to be continued and done it in a second session, a third session, I could have probably adjusted better on the fly. But it was one of those things that we were trying to get everything done before my friends were leaving. And, it is what it is. It's a learning experience. No game master is perfect, regardless of how long they've been playing the game, or playing tabletop. So that's my story. It was not a great ending, but I hope you take some inspiration from some of the ideas I had, why Slarkethel and Iymrith are working together. I don't expect you guys to build a massive, stadium. I mean, look at the size of this thing. Let me go to full screen. I mean, you can see the pictures almost don't give it justice. Because this thing is very large. Let me even get out of the shot a little bit. So it was a fun build. They enjoyed the combat from a visual perspective, but it wasn't a satisfactory one, unfortunately. So, if I did it again, I wouldn't throw the combat. I definitely do not believe in handing players a hollow victory. And maybe I posted this on the boards, on the forums, and people are like, "Hey, your friend was leaving. Why not just throw him a victory party?" And that just felt wrong, to me. Like, it was totally against the philosophy. Like, we don't play D&D that way. It is, you don't get an auto win button. We've never played that way, my group and I. So I was like, no, why would I change the way we've been playing for the last 5 years in the campaign, in the game overall? People are like, well, your friend was moving away. Yeah, I don't know. Anyways, this story has gone on probably way too long. I meant it to be a much shorter video, but here we are. So I learned maybe from my mistakes. I don't know what the lesson is. I don't think you should coddle your players, but maybe when you are in a situation where things aren't going well for them, figure out how you can adjust without just handing them the victory. I would never give advice to say, hey, give your players a victory and just hand it to them, because that's not satisfactory either. If they don't earn the victory, they're going to know it. They're going to know you threw, the lobbed them the ball so they could hit the home run. You throw them a slow pitch over the middle of the plate. That maybe that's, I don't know. Maybe your group doesn't care about that. Maybe they want you to throw a slow pitch over the middle of the plate. That's not how our game runs. And I told them from the get go, I was like, I don't play that kind of DM. I play hard. People could die, and it is what it is. I'm not going to play the monster stupid. And I think they like that. They'll, I know they like that. We had a whole discussion about it. But anyways, I've been Marty over here, Raging Owlbear. My long overdue unupdated blog. But look for me on Twitter. I'm getting out on the other socials too, because Twitter is awful. Everything is terrible on Twitter. But I'm trying to post more on Blue Sky and Mastodon and other stuff. I'm doing what I can. So, anyways, thank you for watching. And this is the end for Storm King's Thunder. I'm going to hopefully post about some of the other stuff we've been up to. We played some Lord of the Rings games the last few. We played the One Ring a lot recently. I'd love to talk about how that went. We had some really great sessions, actually. I was very pleased with how that went. It was a lot of fun. I highly recommend the One Ring. It's probably one of my new favorites in terms of fantasy gaming. I love Middle Earth, and it's hard to get that Tolkien flavor exactly, but it's a lot of fun. Anyways, counting up to an hour. I wanted to say thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I should have said that at the very beginning, but I never do. But help a brother out. Give me a like if you found this content valuable. Please check out my other videos. There's so much good stuff. You know, I talk about Golden Fields. I talk about Tribor. I talk about lots of cool stuff that I did during the course of this campaign. I think a lot of the ideas are really fun, and they could absolutely help you at least generate, maybe your own ideas, or absolutely use what I have learned over the last 13 episodes of this series. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you get some benefit from, listening to me meander for an hour. Thanks very much. I appreciate it. Hopefully I'll see you again soon, talking about some of our other games, the One Ring, other D&D, etc. But have a good day wherever you are. I hope it's great. Good day.